Hey guys, Nikki here. I'm doing a wrap up for March. If you want to hear what I've read this month, stay tuned. So I didn't get every book on my TBR for this month read, but I did get a couple read that wasn't on my official TBR. So I guess that kind of evens out. But let's just get into it. The first book that I finished this month was A Flare of Hope by Elodie Colt. She is a Austrian author who writes both urban fantasy, paranormal romance, and contemporary romance. And so this particular series is an urban fantasy, and it's one of the best urban fantasy I've read, actually. Her characters are really well done, her storyline is well done, her world building is really done well in my opinion. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really good start to the series, and I've actually read all the other books in this series, so it's weird that I'm barely going back to read the first book, but such is life. So the second book I read is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I really liked this. I thought it started out feeling a little young YA for me, but it really ended up being interesting. I really liked the characters. It really honestly felt to me like at a certain point in the story, it started turning into a different story altogether, and you might know what I mean by that if you have read this book. But overall, I really liked it. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. I am excited to continue reading on this series. I think I'm going to read the second book coming up in April, so we'll see how that goes. The next one that I finished in audiobook is Britt Marie Was Here by Fredrik Backman. I don't have the book itself, but I have the book that precedes that story, which is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. Again, this is one of my favorite books of all time. I just felt like these characters were really well done, and I really sympathized with the characters. Britt Marie is one of these characters who, it's almost like she's on the autism spectrum or Asperger's or some kind of OCD tendencies, because she's just, everything has to be in its place and done just a certain way. Her life has been kind of flipped upside down at the end of this book and the beginning of Britt Marie Was Here. And so she's kind of navigating her way through her new life, basically. And it was a really well done story that gets you in the feels, and it brings in a whole new community to get to know and love. And that's one thing that I really like about Fredrik Backman books is the communities that he builds, their dynamics, and the way that all the different characters play their part. Britt Marie Was Here, I don't feel like it was quite on the level as My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, but it definitely had its own place. I gave that one 4 stars. So if you're a Fredrik Backman fan, I do recommend these books. The next books I finished were actually a duet of ARCs that I got from L.M. Halloran. The first one is Art of Sin, and the second one was Sin of Love, which together they make the Illusions duet. I gave the first book 4 stars. I felt like maybe there were a couple of things lacking just a bit, but overall the story was really well done. As always, the writing is done really well. It's very professional and very compelling, and it really pulls you into the story. The second book I gave 5 stars because the second book blew me away. These are not for the lighthearted. These are very dark romance, especially in the second book, a pretty detailed victim experience of sex trafficking and a person being kidnapped and forced into certain situations and forced to do certain things. And if rape is a trigger for you, I don't recommend these books. But aside from that, I do think that these were done extremely well. I enjoyed these stories a lot. I think I read the first book over a few nights, and I read the second book, started it one night and finished it the following day. I feel like any L.M. Halloran book is well worth the read. She's definitely one of my all-time favorite authors to read, and one that I am happy to read ARCs for anytime because I know that they're gonna be good. The next audiobook I finished was The Bourbon Kings by J.R. Ward. Lord. And I really enjoyed that story. I thought it was going to be a romance, but it turned out not really being romance. It was more, I would call it a drama, but I likened that one to kind of like a Real Housewives of wherever you want to call it. I think they're in Kentucky, but it was a very good story, a very well written story, a very interesting and entertaining story. A lot of family drama and scandal, and I mean, you have missing family members who are really relied upon that are kind of off doing their own things and dealing with their own demons, and meanwhile things back home are like going to shit, and it's almost like a murder mystery, like who killed this person and why and what did that person know, and kind of a lifestyles of the rich and famous. But I don't know, it was really good. I really enjoyed it, but there wasn't a whole lot of romance in this story. So if you're not big on romance, but you are big on story and drama and that kind of thing, then definitely give this one a try. The next one was a romance, which was Sex Not Love by Vi Keeland. I definitely had some issues with the story. I think I gave it a 3.5. I didn't love the female character. I just thought that there were some things that were not written well about her. For one thing, she was supposed to be a therapist that never went to college. She's supposed to be the legal guardian of her ex-husband's daughter, her former stepdaughter, who in this point in the story is 16 years old. And there was one character that showed up maybe like a couple of minor scenes, which was the landlord of the apartment that they live in. And she said he was just so creepy that she didn't like being alone with him. So anytime she knew he was going to come around, she would try to make sure that her stepdaughter would be home. And I just thought that was so shitty. What self-respecting adult would use their 16-year-old stepdaughter as a shield for a creepy guy who, I mean, if he gives you the creeps, there's a reason, right? Like either he's a violent person or you feel like he's a sexual predator. Any way you look at that situation, why the hell would she put her stepdaughter in the middle of that? So I just thought that was stupid. But I really did like the hero of the story, and I like the storyline itself. I just think that the heroine could have been written a lot better. So that's really all I have to say about that one. It's not my favorite Vi Keeland story. The next book I read was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. I loved this story. I listened to the audiobook, which was absolutely fantastic. Richard Armitage did just such an amazing job narrating that story. He's just so talented. Like, he has all the voices down, all of the accents. Of course, he's a fantastic actor. So, I mean, there's just no question that he was going to nail this, and he did. But the story itself was just so dark and deep and emotional for me. And when I did my review, which I will link up here for you guys if you want to watch that, I actually cried. Like, there's just one part in that book, and there were several parts that were gut-wrenching, but there was one part that really hit me in the gut. 5 stars on that one. The next one I read was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. 5 stars. I really enjoyed this story. I really liked Evelyn Hugo and her character and how diverse this story was. I liked that she knew her power and how to use it and wasn't afraid to use it when she needed to. I liked how she was willing to do whatever it took and made the hard choices that she had to make to not necessarily even get what she wanted, but to do what she felt was the best for the situation in terms of whatever the case might be at the moment. For example, in this story, she falls in love with a woman who is another A-list movie star, and in the day and age that the story is taking place, or at least the flashbacks, or the retelling of the story, I mean, it's illegal. Like, they could have gone to jail for being in a homosexual relationship, and so for that reason they had to keep everything a secret. And they could have also lost their jobs, and so she had already had to pull herself up from rock bottom. Not only could she not afford to bring that upon herself and her career again, she didn't want to do that for the person that she loved either. And so I felt like this was such a well-written book. There were so many facets to the story. There were 3 different separate points of view. There was Evelyn Hugo herself. There was Monique, who was a journalist in present day, who we find out has a deeper connection than we're originally led to believe in the beginning of the story. Anyway, and then there was like a 3rd kind of point of view that was different little snippets of the tabloids and the, you know, the news clippings of the times at whatever point in the story that she was at. It was sort of like a tell-all at the end of her life, as she's going back and remembering everything that happened. She's finally divulging all these things. And by the way, like the last line of this book could not have been more perfect. It was perfect. Anyway, 5 stars for Evelyn Hugo. I highly recommend this book if you haven't already read it. The next one I listened to on audiobook was Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. And this was so fun to listen to. This was such a great story. 5 stars on this one. I really enjoyed this story. I loved these characters. Hazel was just so quirky and fun and unapologetic, and Josh was a Korean heartthrob. I mean, he really was made out to be a masculine, sensitive guy. I don't know how else to say that, because he was sensitive, but he wasn't sensitive in the sense of like being a sissy boy. Like he still had his masculinity about him, but he just had a way of like, I mean, he wasn't afraid to own his emotions, I guess you could say. So I thought that was done really well. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the slow burn and the build up, and very, very much recommend this story if you like contemporary romance. That one was really fun. I really liked that one. The next one was The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. I need to find other stuff by this author because I loved this book. I could not get enough of this. Like, it was just so well written. It was so entertaining, and it was intellectual. It made me think. Like, the whole time travel aspect of it was engaging. Like, you just couldn't help but sit there and like ponder over, how would that work? Okay, wait, if this happened, then what about all these other ramifications? And anyway, this was so well done. Harry August was such a smart, intellectual guy, and I just loved how he was always 5 steps ahead of everybody, and even though his enemy was a worthy foe, he was definitely on level with Harry August, but Harry August managed to put him in his place and keep him on his toes. And so I really love this book. Like, this is one that I feel like I would go back and reread. It is a really long book. I think it was 405 pages, but it was so well worth the time it took to read this book. I cannot express enough how much I love this story. The end of this book was perfect. This is one that I feel like I'm gonna have to reread. Definitely 5 stars on this one, and I would probably give it way more than that if I could. So if you haven't checked this book out, I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. The next book I read this month, and I ended up listening to the audiobook because I started running out of time, and I knew if I read this, I would not finish it in time before the month was over. But Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nung. I don't know how to say the last name. I heard it when they said it on the audiobook, and I still can't replicate it. I really enjoyed the story. I think I gave it 4 stars. It may have been a little young for my taste for YA, but I enjoyed the characters. Lay was the main character. I don't know if she was lesbian or bisexual, or if this was a gay for you type of story. It didn't really make that clear, I don't think, or if it did, I must have missed it. But I really thought that the world was interesting. The way that there were the paper cast, the moon cast, which were, I think, animals with like human. They were kind of a mix between humans and animals. And then there was the steel cast, which were a combination between the two. I may have that backwards, but the Bull King was an ass. And like I thought at one point that maybe the build-up was going to make us think one thing and then at a certain point switch it up, but yeah, that didn't happen. I just hated him more and more as the story went along. I guess I don't really know a whole lot to say about the story. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I assume there are going to be more books in a series because of the way that it ended. There were definitely some things left open-ended, some strings that were not tied up. I assume there will be more to this story, which I do look forward to reading because, I mean, the writing was good, the characters were good. I don't feel like it was just the most rich in detail as some of the other books. I mean, that really didn't take away from it being a good story. I really do think it was a good story. And I really can't pinpoint anything particularly disappointing about it. I mean, really it was good. I don't know if it was just that it was just a little on the young side for me. There was also rape in the story of an adult character raping underage characters. And so I didn't love that, but it was not done in a glorified way. It was definitely something that was like, you know, this isn't cool and it shouldn't be happening, but it is. And so what do we do about it kind of a thing. So, I mean, that's just, I mean, it was what it was, but it was a good book and I would really like to continue reading on. I only got about 60% of the way through this story. The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. I had really high hopes for this book. It was the Hello Sunshine book club pick for last month, for February. All of the other Hello Sunshine book club books that I have read have been some of the best books I've ever read. The Alice Network, This Is How It Always Is, Something in the Water. I mean, there's just all these other books have just been like up here on the level, and this one was just like so far down here. It's like it's not even funny. The characters were flat. There was nothing distinguishing about any of them. They didn't have personality. There was nothing about them. It was just, they were just blah. And then the story was just blah. Like nothing was happening. I at 60% of the way through, I had no idea what point we were trying to make or what goal we were trying to accomplish. And so I really didn't have any reason to continue reading to the end because what the hell were they trying to work towards? You know, like it was just spinning wheels. It was just like, it honestly felt like reading somebody's boring ass journal of just play by play. This is what happened today. I didn't like it. Like if I rated this book, I might give it 2 stars. But I didn't even rate it. I just DNF'd it at 60% and I just don't really care. And I mean, I've heard that people like this one better than they like The Wedding Date. So if that's the case, I just have no interest in reading The Wedding Date. And if there's anything after this one, no thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you like that book. I'm sure that it's for somebody, but it was not for me. I did not get to Circe. I don't know why I waited because this is one of the ones I'm most excited about to read. But I think it's because it was, you know, to be honest, like it took me so long to get through this and it was just so good. And it still took me so long to get through that I was like, oh my gosh, because this one, it's almost just as long. I mean, when you take out, you know, the cast of characters and the things after the story, 385 pages, so I mean it's only 20 pages shorter than Harry August, but I don't know, I still want to read this, so this is probably going to just be added to my April TBR. Same with The Gilded Wolves, because again, this one is 386 pages. So, you know, and I actually started reading Gilded Wolves. I think I got like, let me see, where am I at? I'm on, chapter 2. And there was a prologue, so it's really like the 3rd chapter of the book, but I don't know, like it's not just terribly compelling yet, so I guess, I mean, I still want to read it just because I think it will probably get better, but I didn't finish it for the month of March. So that wraps up my read books for March 2019. I will see you guys soon in my TBR for April once I get that put together, and let me know if y'all want to see any certain book tags. If you're not already following me on Instagram, definitely follow me there if you follow any of my social media. If you want extra little videos here and there, definitely catch me on Instagram. Subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss the new stuff, and subscribe to my blog because I have some other things that I post on there that I don't actually make videos about. That's all for now. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.